disband.
Yeah, what's there to say before judgment? It was all preordained. The county wasn't going to go for.
We should have just told them to close. We should have listened to Sam. I told them not to do it. But then again, it's always the kiss of Sam didn't kiss of death. I tell them to do it, they do the opposite. Tell them not to do it, they do the opposite.
Call the meeting to order. Mr. Guston, since you're awake, would you lead us in the pledge? Everybody rise, put your hand on your heart.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, we'll observe a moment of silence. I want you to, the U.S. and Nevada flags were the ones that were flown over Iraq, given to the city by Gregory Conley, U.S. Army Rangers. One of our employees that I think just retired, Chuck Conley, safety program for the city of Reno. So remember all of our troops in your thoughts. Madam Secretary, call the roll, please.
Hasjev, Guston, Zadra, Sferaza, absent Dorch, Ayazi, Cashel.
Here. If you happen to run into Gregory Conley or Chuck Conley, be sure and thank them. Thank Chuck for his son bringing those flags back to us. All right. At this time, approval of the agenda. Have a motion, second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. Public comment. Jeff Church.
Good afternoon. I wanted to do this at this portion. My name is Jeff Church. I'm a retired city employee. First, unfortunately, I want to point out that I believe that this meeting, as it pertains to the labor contracts, does not meet Nevada's open meeting law requirements, which I'll spell out given time, relating to NRS 241020. I'm the lead plaintiff in a class action lawsuit, Church versus City of Reno, over treatment of military guard and reserve personnel for many years ago. This case did result in a consent decree, which I believe is still binding. For that reason, and as a concerned Reno taxpayer, I sought to see a copy of the proposed fire labor contracts. I think there may be some oversights as it relates to military members and actually harm the city in favor of the employee. I tried twice and was rebuffed. I find it outrageous that taxpayers are not allowed to see the contract that spends our money and gets voted on by the Reno City Council. I can only assume that the contract is available to City Council members, and NRS 241020, number 6, requires that such material be available to the public as supporting material. This was not done. I have 2 documents as to my attempts to the city's refusal, which I've given to the clerk. I realize that labor negotiations are confidential under NRS 288. I believe this is wrong and should be changed, but I don't believe that NRS 288 exemption applies to an open meeting by the elected city council and does not fall into the exemption specifically spelled out in NRS 288-220 1 through 5. Had the legislature intended it to be confidential, they would have added that as a subparagraph 6. This is not a negotiation. It is a finalized proposed contract that should now see the light of day to the taxpayer. Likewise, I believe the agenda staff report is too vague as it states staff report approval of collective bargaining agreement. Per the Attorney General, quote, public bodies should not approve or take action on administrative reports by staff unless the agenda clearly denotes that the report is an action item and specifically sets out the matter to be acted on in the report. While it says the word approval, I don't think it denotes an action item nor indicates the council's options of approval, rejection, or referral for further action. I urge you to consult your city attorney before taking any action on this. I'm sorry to do this, but I've tried to get copies of the contract. I also urge you to make that material available to the taxpayers. I don't want to waste city resources or my time. I'm not an attorney, but I did contact George Taylor, the Nevada Attorney General's office that handles open meeting law issues. Unfortunately, I received a vague response. Until a complaint was actually filed, he could not be specific, but based on what he told me, that's why I'm here today. I'm sorry for the late notice and problems that it causes, but I've been trying to resolve this without success. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Mr.
you.
Mayor,
Yes.
Tracy Chase, Reno City Attorney's Office. Although we don't normally respond to public comment, we have located those contracts in the clerk's office, and we will bring them down and have them available out in the front for you in about 2 minutes.
That's not acceptable. I can't read them in 20 minutes.
Yeah, they were also available on our website, but any event, we will make those available.
Mike Ginsburg.
Good afternoon. I'm Mike Ginsburg, president of Sierra Nevada Community Aquatics. This past weekend, we had our Aqua Fest over at Idlewild Pool, and I'm here today to thank the City of Reno for co-sponsoring this event. I'd like to give special thanks to Julie Conaway and her staff, Jonathan Skinner, a big thanks to Joe Wilson, and all the lifeguards over at the Idlewild Pool. This event went pretty flawlessly. We had some requirements to have lane lines rotated, dive blocks set in, and by the time the athletes got there, everything was ready. The athletes we had this year were Aaron Pearsall, Lacey Niemeyer, and Rowdy Gaines, who are all Olympic medalists. It was very well received. It was a perfect day, really. The weather was great. We couldn't ask more. I'd also like to thank Peggy Nelson Aguilar for all her help walking me through the permitting process. So we finally got it all done, and we just want to say thank you by giving the city. I'd like, if we could get Julie Conaway, Jonathan Skinner, Joe Wilson, and Peggy to come up here. Sierra Nevada Community Aquatics would like to present this autographed poster that we had done and framed, and hopefully the City of Reno will put it up, hopefully over at the Parks and Rec Commission area.
Is the mayor on there with his bathing suit?
So put it up somewhere where everybody can see it, and we appreciate your help. And we plan on doing this again next year, the end of August. And the reason is the Olympics will be in London next year at the end of July, the beginning of August. So we're thinking a couple weeks after the Olympics, bring some more Olympians in and do this. It was a great day. Thank you for all your help.
Thank you for everything. And keep on plowing. We appreciate what you're doing.
Keep going.
All right. I know I didn't have to suggest that, but Patrick Flynn.
Good afternoon. My name is Patrick Flynn. I'm proud to be an employee and a mechanic at the City of Reno. We noticed that you had our department on for outsourcing, and I just wanted to give you a little information on it and let you know how we feel in the shop. We have 5 mechanics, 2 service workers, 1 parts writer and service writer, 1 admin staff, and 1 supervisor. We maintain over 600 vehicles and equipment for the City of Reno. We maintain 150 pieces of equipment and vehicles for Tomwa. We're very dedicated to our jobs. All of our mechanics are ASE certified. Most of us are master mechanics in both automotive and heavy and medium trucks, and we care about what we do. We work with people from the city day in and day out. We're a lot of work with the police department. We're very careful about their vehicles. Every car out there is pursuit ready. We make sure of that. We have a lot of safety concerns. We have a lot of cost concerns. We watch every dime we spend in the shop. And one of the things that I hope you remember when you're looking to outsource, we don't have to make a profit. We have to make the vehicles safe. And we do that, and we work very hard and very diligently at it. We were the first shop in Nevada 6 years ago in northern Nevada to get ASE Blue Seal certified, which means all of our mechanics have certifications. We work very hard. We go through and do a lot of training, a lot of research on our own. We work at staying up on the new technology. And one of the big problems with outsourcing this shop is we're so diversified. We work on everything from motorcycles to Zambonis, sewer equipment, sweepers, everything the city has except for fire equipment. And trying to outsource something like that to somebody who's going to care like we do, you're going to have a hard time. I really believe that. And thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. James Kazera?
Hello, my name's James Kazera. I'm a Reno resident. This is about the rodeo again. I tried to get a hold of Pierre through the city here, his city phone, and Lisa Mann got hold of me twice because I called twice about it. The first time, she told me during the Reno Fair that I should take a vacation, and she didn't do any more than that. The second time, she told me that the city was taking care of the noise problem and that it was no longer my concern. I didn't like that answer either. I got a hold of Pierre at a different phone number that he had given me, and he didn't hear about, Lisa Mann says that they had a house that they were going to use as a monitoring place and monitor the whole rodeo. Pierre had a different version of what was going to happen, that we were going to have a meeting and code enforcement to be out there, and we were going to have it all checked out that way. He called Alex Wosley before the fair. He, as last time I talked to him by phone, he has not received an answer from him. I called Alex Wosley before the fair to find out what was going on, and every day of the fair to tell him that it was still noisy. He, to date, has not returned any of my calls. I would like this to be put on the agenda. I would like Alex Mosley to speak on what was going on. I would like a copy of the records, so where he was getting those recordings from, how loud they are, and what time they are. And I'd like it before he comes up here and speaks, so I have a time to look it over. The rodeo was loud except Thursday. Thursday was the Wild Bull group in there. They were not part of the Reno Rodeo. Their sound system, the same sound system, was turned down. No problems with that. When the fans cheered, they were actually louder than their sound system. When the rodeo got in there, up went the volume. You could not, their speakers was louder than the whole audience cheering. And I have no problem about the audience cheering, but it only lasts for a few seconds. But the whole run of the rodeo was loud, and they started one morning at 6:30 or 6:45 in the morning giving announcements on what was happening, and from the Livestock Event Center and the rodeo grounds, and that was loud, and people were complaining to me. I also have a petition here. Not that many people there will do anything or sign any petitions, but I do have some more names here for that. So it's not just me who is complaining. And if I have to take a vacation, I was wondering who was going to pay me for taking a vacation, whether it's a city or the Reno. And if the city pays for it or the rodeo, all these folks should get paid too.
Thanks, James. Mr. Sam Dene.
Sam Dene, the Encyclopedia of Reno Government. Sam is an Air Force Academy graduate, and as we speak, we have a bunch of Nevada Supreme Court judges down there deciding whether or not the citizens of Nevada get to vote for their own congressman. I think what the Republican poobahs who sign the checks and pull the strings, snatch the bodies and steal the votes, those poobahs of a couple hundred people should not be allowed to decide who gets to vote and who vote for and who gets to go to Congress. Every citizen who wants to run for Congress should be allowed on that ballot. And my prediction is that the judges are going to do the honest and honorable thing and allow all citizens who want to run for Congress to be able to run for Congress. Even Mr. Klinger could put his name on there, or Mayor Cashel could put his name on there, along with the other 35 people who are already on there. Anyway, it will be a dastardly thing if they allow a couple of poobahs to decide who gets to be on a ballot. That is totally un-American, and I don't mean to sound like a curmudgeon, but this really stinks to high heavens. Yesterday, over at the county commission, I was one of the very few people to go to the podium and adamantly speak against the disintegration of the fire department. And yet, despite my adamant objection, the county commission, on a vote of 4-1, voted to disband that merger that I spoke adamantly in favor of many years ago. And it has not been a perfect merger. I've never seen a perfect merger. But what we have had in the meantime has been far better than what was taking place before that, both as far as safety and as far as the financial impact to the community. So I think those people are wrong to try to disband the fire department. I notice Mr. Klinger is here for his third day. I have to remind him once again to make sure that his number one rule in the morning when he gets up is to remind himself to, guess what? Listen to Sam. And if he doesn't hear me talking about it, he can go to my website, renocitizen.com. There are probably enough suggestions and ideas on there to save this community $150 million within 6 months. By the way, the governor has taken to becoming a Sam Dene watcher. He came down to the coffee shop the other day, and immediately the paparazzi arrived. He wanted a picture with Sam. He said, Sam, I've got a lot of pictures in my archives. I'd like a picture of Sam. And there it was. He took the picture, and he gave me a picture too, and I put it and dedicated one of my music albums. It says right on there, everybody's asking, who's that with Sam in the picture? Last but not least, my good friend Judge Bill Manel this morning. Judge Manel tells me not to come down here anymore, and he said, here's what you ought to tell them, Sam. If they don't start cleaning up the problems in this community, tell them that Sam's not going to come to the meetings anymore.
Nice seeing you, Mr. Dene, since you're leaving. No, sorry about that. All right, I'll close the public comment section. Now we'll go to public hearings. Madam Secretary, have all the notices been sent?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, proper notice was given.
Before I do that, I forgot. Mr. Fraser, are you on the phone?
I am. Hello, Mr. Mayor.
Well, you just woke us all up because they have the volume way up. How are you doing?
I'm doing good.
Everything okay with your mama?
Everything's okay.
Okay. All right. Are you going to be participating, or did you have some comment now?
No, item B1, 2, and 3, if I could, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we'll call on you as we go through them.
Great, thank you.
Okay. All the notice has been sent. We have none, so I'll bring no public comment.
Mr. Mayor, Tracy Chase, Reno City Attorney's Office. In regards to Council Member Zadra, she has a family member that is married to a firefighter, so she needs to disclose and abstain on that item. So this will act as her official disclosure. And so on the IAFF agreement, she is not able to vote on that. In regards to the general budget items, she can certainly vote on those, and the RFDAA, if I say that right here today. Reno
do it.
Fire Department Administrators Association.
Okay. We have a public comment before we go. Jeff Church.
Sorry. Jeff Church, resident of City of Reno, retired City of Reno employee. How can I comment on a plan, on a proposal that I'm not allowed to read and don't have adequate time to read? The contract's not available for public review. It should have been available weeks in advance or as far in advance as possible. I do have questions about the definition of employee as it applies to military leave, and I also want to be a good watchdog, as the judge in this case called me, and I want to see that the rights of guardsmen and reservists are protected, as well as looking at the overall contract. I do want to say that the contract as proposed is not posted on the Reno website, and I want to quote from an email that I received from the city, from Reno Direct. Quote, "The Reno City Council has not accepted the tentative agreement. It is on Wednesday's council agenda, so it hasn't been posted. Only approved, signed labor relations agreements get posted." So once again, how can we comment? What are we afraid of? Why can't the citizens and the taxpayers look at this? I want to quote from the open meeting law book that's provided by the Nevada Attorney General. Quote, "The OML requires that at least one copy of the agenda, proposed ordinance, or regulation which will be discussed at the meeting, and any other supporting material, except material confidential by law, be provided at no charge to any person who requests it. The material must be made available at a public place once the material has been distributed to members of the public body and at the public meeting." So, end quote. So in other words, I interpret that to mean as soon as the council members receive that, that should be available to us, the taxpayer, not, here 5 minutes before the hearing. Thank you very much.
Did you make a request of one last week
I-
up at the office of the Secretary's office?
Sir, I sent 2 emails dated June 28th at 9:30 was the response. My email was sent the 27th of June at 6:51 p.m.
Okay, did you come in to pick them up or go up to the office to pick them up?
No, they told me I couldn't get them. I have 2 different emails, 2 different people said not available.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Tracy Chase, Reno City Attorney's Office. I've checked with the clerk's office, and those contracts are available at the clerk's desk, and they've been out on the counter as well.
Since
So
when?
I don't know. The clerk will have to respond to that, but I think they, at the same time, they were provided. I don't know when they were provided to the council by the clerk.
No, they've been at our counter. Someone brought them down about 30 minutes ago.
Oh, they hadn't been there since Friday?
No.
I don't know if they were distributed to council prior to that time. I don't
I
know
don't
if council
think they
even
were.
received those contracts.
Okay. Mr. Sam Dene.
Sam Dene, the Encyclopedia of Reno Government, and I'm not objecting to the process, but I would think some of these problems would be solved if you would allow the citizens to speak after you discuss these contracts, and assuming that you are going to discuss them rather than just rubber stamp or vote on them. But I'm willing to stand up here. I think I know what I want to say, and I'm not trying to be contentious about this. From the very first day that this city started to go downhill, as per my projections 3 years ago, from the very first day, and you started to blame the fire department and use them as the scapegoat for the myriad wrong decisions that these various councils have made through the last 15 years that I've been attending. I call it a bait and switch. You've got a lot of other problems that are worse than and I'm not saying that the fire department's not without sin. I'm sure there's things going on that need to be corrected, and I'm glad they're being corrected, but it just does not sound right for you people to be choosing the fire department as the scapegoat to offset a lot of wrong decisions. So right here at the first thing you're going to do, and I'm assuming from what I've read in the Reno Regurgitator newspaper, and I slap myself for believing it, but I tend to believe this one. everybody's generally, supposedly happy with this brouhaha that you're going to vote on now. A 0% salary increase for the firefighters, Local 731, and simultaneously, basically a 6% salary decrease. So it seems kind of redundant, because if you're going to get a salary decrease, it logically seems you shouldn't have a salary increase. But I guess what you're saying is that these people are foregoing an increase and giving that up, but they're also going to take a 6% decrease along with that. And I think that's a good thing. And then these other folks are involved too, the department administrators. But my main focal point is, I just don't think it's fair. And I know the fire department knows how to take care of themselves. They're big men, but I don't think it's fair to be for you, and especially for the media, to take the stance that the fire department is the problem, is the culprit for all of our problems in this city. As I use as my benchmark, and the mayor knows because I looked at the ceiling, this building right here, if you had not bought this building and just stayed in that perfectly good city council building over there, you would have had $30 or $40 million in the bank account for these rainy days. And I know there's a nice little operation going on over there now, but that came 6 months later, and there were lots of other buildings, and I'm totally in favor of that children's museum. Don't think I'm not, but there's plenty of other places you could have put that, and that's just one example of it being wrong to blame the fire department for our problems.
Okay, thank you very much. Have no other public comment. I'm going to close it and bring it back to the table for discussion.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, city manager, Renee Runges, Director of Human Resources, for the record. The item that is before you today is a collective bargaining agreement between the City of Reno and the IAFF Local 731 for the year July 1, 2010 to June 30th, 2011. The city and the union began negotiations for this agreement in early 2010. An agreement was not reached. The parties invoked the fact-finding procedure under NRS and concluded that process. In the meantime, negotiations began.
Just a minute. Mr. Fraza?
I'm here, Mr. Mayor.
We're getting feedback from somewhere on your phone or somebody talking.
Okay, that's weird.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. In the meantime, during this process, negotiations were opened for the 11-12 labor agreement, and those discussions began in early 2011. During this time, the parties continued to talk about the 2010-11 agreement as well as the 11-12, and reached an agreement, a tentative agreement, in the middle of May of this year. The IAFF completed their vote on the tentative agreement late last week. And in this contract for fiscal year 10-11, there are no wage increases and no increase in benefits. The language remains the same. So that's what you will be voting on this item. And for your consideration, the total cost of the item for 1 year is $29,601,254. And what you have in your packet is an item that lists the cost for every article in the contract that has a cost for the fiscal year 2010-2011. Be happy to take any questions.
Okay, any questions? Mr. Dorich.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And some of my questions actually pertain to B2, but they are intertwined. B1 and B2 are kind of a package deal. So I want to, as we get into this, most of my questions are going to really apply to B2, but I want to ask them now as part of B1. And it's going to come into the issue that was voted on by the county commission yesterday to sever the interlocal agreement and the impacts that's going to have on our ability to live up to the conditions of this contract. Can you explain that to us a little bit? I mean, because in item B2, if we lose the SAFER grant, then the salary benefits go back to the firefighter, so they're not giving up those salary benefits, correct?
That's correct, under the B2 item, yes. The salary and benefits would go back to what they are currently today, which would be before the 11-12 agreement was ratified.
And we don't have a conclusion on what'll happen with this with the county's vote yesterday, since they've voted to sever that agreement. We could have to lay off firefighters, which could put the SAFER grant in jeopardy, correct?
I think I'm going to let Kevin respond to that.
Kevin Knutson, Director of the Office of Management and Budget. First, to clarify, in the contract that we have before us, it's only for the 3.89% salary reduction to go back. The other benefits and changes we made would remain in effect.
Well, but that is substantial. I mean,
It is,
the cost of
absolutely.
that is what on an annual basis?
It's close to $1 million.
So that's 10 firefighters right there.
Absolutely. I just wanted to clarify that that's what is at stake with the SAFER grant. In terms, could you please repeat the second question, just to make sure I get it right?
Well, it was what impacts could this have? I mean, I know we haven't had a chance to really analyze all of it yet, but I think the public needs to know that, I mean, the way this contract was presented to us from the firefighters is that if we lose this SAFER grant, maybe not even in our control,
Right.
they get these benefits back, some of these benefits back.
Well, there's two caveats I'd give before I make the answer. The first one is this will be in the 12-13 budget because the contract won't come to an end until the end of next fiscal year, which starts on Friday. And the second part of it is we'd still have to negotiate with the union about whether or not we met the terms of the contract between us and them because the county took this action versus the city taking this action. But that said, number one, we may have to pay back a portion of the grant that we had already received, which could be up to $1 million. And then if we did have the requirement to pay those salaries back starting in fiscal year 2012-13, that would be an additional $1 million. So up to $2 million could be the impact.
So 20 firefighters, approximately.
Yes, that's about the equivalent, 20 firefighters.
And have we had the opportunity to have this discussion with the IAFF yet?
We have not.
So are we premature in approving this until we can sit down with them and know what we're getting into?
Well, this is what we've negotiated so far. If we wanted to go back and renegotiate from this point.
I don't know that it's a renegotiation. I think it's clarification.
Okay. Well,
And I mean, I'm looking at this as what happened yesterday drastically changes what we're looking at moving forward with this SAFER grant. Yet we're required, under the terms of this, to accept the SAFER grant.
correct.
And
Well, that's a policy
Is it
direction that we.
considered laying off if they transfer those people back over?
I mean, there's a lot of questions up in the air on this, I think, Bob, and I think that's the issue is I don't know that we know what we're getting into. And I mean, so I think there's some challenges to this. I mean, other challenges that I've brought up in the past, but I mean, there's some new challenges as of yesterday that we're going to have to face, and it could put us in a really bad situation once this interlocal agreement is terminated.
Yes.
Sure. For the record, Maureen McKissick, Grants and Federal Legislative Affairs. We have staff here who are going to be responding to questions under C1, but if you have questions regarding what ifs when it comes to the SAFER grant, we could answer those questions now.
Well, I don't know if you've heard the questions that I've been asking. I mean, clearly, all of these items are kind of intertwined.
Mm-hmm.
But the concessions that IAFF has given up is contingent upon the SAFER grant.
Correct.
And us not losing the SAFER grant during the term of the contract.
Correct.
Based on what happened yesterday by the county commission, there's a good chance we could lose the SAFER grant.
And actually, we called the Department of Homeland Security immediately after the commission voted on that to get you an answer for just this question today. It's staff's best understanding that you would not lose the grant. DHS will permit us under this circumstance, which is admittedly very odd, even odd by them, to reset the staffing level as of July 1st, 2012.
Well, so that's a different answer than I got earlier today. Did you get that answer just recently?
We got that answer yesterday afternoon.
Because that's not the answer we got in the when we were talking earlier.
This is new information. And this was, of course, the crux of the question. What would happen if?
So they've assured us that we will not lose the SAFER grant.
I'm going to ask Michelle Hobbs and Rob Boney to join me up here. We have been on the phone virtually every day with the Department of Homeland Security as developments occurred to try and develop answers for just these contingencies. So it had to do with staffing levels, budget levels, four-man crews, hire backs, all of the different aspects of this as they were moving. And we specifically did ask yesterday about the ramifications with respect to staffing levels and layoffs. And I'll let Michelle answer this.
For the record, Michelle Hobbs, Reno Fire Department. You're exactly right, Councilman Dortch. We don't know what this next year is going to bring us regarding staffing levels with the dissolvement of the Truckee Meadows agreement. There are a lot of issues to be resolved. There are current Truckee Meadows employees under Reno Fire that have the option of going back. We know Truckee Meadows is going to need to hire employees. What we don't know is what that contract under Truckee Meadows is going to look like, which employees are going to opt to go back, how many employees they're going to need at the end of the day. We talked to DHS and SAFER. They have allowed us to reset our staffing level with what new Reno Fire Department is going to look like when we separate from Truckee Meadows and not impact those 10 positions. What puts the SAFER grant in default is if we actually have to issue a layoff notice.
Well, it's my understanding it's highly likely we're going to have to issue a layoff notice.
We will have employees separate. If employees choose to take positions with Truckee Meadows, that would not be a layoff. Transferred employees going back, employees who Truckee Meadows is going to be hiring, employees who may choose to go over to Truckee Meadows. Those are some of the questions we don't know right now because we don't know what their structure is going to look like, how many employees are going to go back, and whether or not some of our current employees are going to choose to separate and go to Truckee Meadows.
It's likely we're going to have to issue layoff notices. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, if they don't agree to the counties and they stay with us, then we're going to be over.
We're going to have to issue layoff notice.
And let me just clarify, because we did bring that up repeatedly. That would be the one situation that DHS would not waiver and would not tolerate.
So in all likelihood, we will be in default of the SAFER grant.
If we lay off employees, yes, we will be in default.
So again, my question is are we premature on approving this until we can sit back down with IAFF and get some clarification on how this is going to happen based upon the action that was taken yesterday? And that's probably not a question for you guys.
Who's the question for, the chief or who?
Probably going to be for us. I mean, I've got other questions, but that's
No,
obviously.
go ahead with questions, then we'll come back to that.
One of the provisions is this 4896, and I know we asked to do this on a trial basis, and we were told no, that it has to be on a permanent basis. And my question now is for the chief. Chief, what are the calls for service in Station 1?
They're averaging anywhere from 20 to 25 calls per shift.
Per 24-hour shift?
Yes, sir. They're one of they're the busiest station in the district.
And there's
for the
no
record, Mike Hernandez, Reno Fire Chief.
And there's no concern on our part that a 48-hour shift with that amount of calls for service could be detrimental and could actually have some safety concerns?
Actually, I've had that discussion with the union president, and as we move through that process, it's one of our concerns. The workload is above average for most of our departments, and working a 48-hour shift is a concern for me. I've shared that concern with the association, and we're going to look at exploring options, maybe moving people in mid-shift, something like that. But again, once we go down this road, we'll look at that. But yes, it is a concern. That's a heavy workload station.
And based on this 4896, that unless they agree to any kind of change in that, we're stuck with it, correct? Much like we are four-man crews, much like.
Correct.
other
And-
things
and
that have been
I believe
negotiated
the
into
only-
the contract.
Yes, sir. I believe, and I'm going from memory here, and you get to be my age and you forget the names of your kids, but I believe there is a trigger to revert back to the original work schedule if sick leave, if there's an increase in sick leave. So I think that's the only, the trigger point that would allow us to go back to the original schedule.
Okay. That's all my questions, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Any other questions? Mr. Azzi?
Renee, how much, without the SAFER grant, but this saves, if I had my math right, 2.2 million per year? Was that the approximate amount?
The 11 to 13 agreement would, yes. The
Correct.
10-11 agreement is status quo.
Correct, because I'm sort of going on the SAFER grant and lumping all these together, so I apologize. So if we're saving 2.2 million, and the 3.87 amounts to a little over 1 million a year, if we had to give that back, we gave up the SAFER grant. When I do the math, it looks like the SAFER grant costs us $83,000 a month if we had to pay it back. But the savings, even without, if we had to give back the 3.87, if we ever got rid of that, the savings would be $96,000 a month. So I think we're still in the black if we take this agreement, even if we had to give up the SAFER grant at some future time. Does that sound about right, about the math?
I'm going to defer to Kevin on the math. Thank you.
Kevin Knutson, Office of Budget and Management. That does sound approximately correct, yes, sir.
Because on the total of this, with the numbers that we have in front of us, the city is saving $186,000 a month
Right.
starting July 1st. But if we had to go back, so we saved that amount, and it's not retroactive, which is one of the things that we negotiated out. So
That's
the
correct.
pay raise is not retroactive. So we're actually, depending on what month, assuming we had to do a layoff and do the SAFER grant, we don't have to go back and retroactively make that 3.87. It just starts from that date.
That's correct. And there's also a question as to whether or not DHS would require us to either discontinue the grant or to refund what had been previously
Right, but
paid.
let's just assume the worst here. I'm just
Right.
going strictly on math. It looks to me like it would still be better off for us financially to take the SAFER grant, and I think when my X's crosses sometime in June of next year is when it actually starts
Right.
saving us money. If we can get through June, we're okay, because of the savings that we've amassed up until then. I mean, from now until June, well, for a year, we've saved over $1 million. And so if I have to refund the SAFER, just in the 3.87, so if I have to
Right.
refund the SAFER grant, it's a wash. It hasn't cost me anything, but in the meantime, I've got 10 more firefighters on the street.
Yeah, that
Is that-
math makes sense to me.
That's what
Yes,
we're
sir.
doing here. We're doing this to try to get more firefighters on the street, I think,
Right.
is the whole purpose of the SAFER grant. And then, maybe Renee can answer this, so this will be my last question. With this agreement, with all of these combined together, how long will it have been, until the firefighters actually got a cost of living adjustment?
The last cost of living adjustment that they received was in January of 2009.
And this goes through June of 2013?
Correct.
So that's 9, 10, 11, 12 and a half, or 4.5 years
Correct.
without and then, even then, they have to negotiate a cost of living increase after that.
For the future.
Okay.
That's correct.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Mr. Asho?
Yep.
Just a minute. Mr. Fraser, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, just a couple. One, to follow up on Councilman Dorch's question on the 4896. I just want to see, is that the model Sparks has now? Are other jurisdictions on that schedule within the region?
Currently, Sparks is on the 4896, City of Sparks, as well as the Sierra Fire Protection District.
And then the second question I would have, and I agree with Councilman Ayazi on we're going to be saving more by accepting this contract and also getting more firefighters. But could we go back now that IAFF has ratified the agreement and see, since the SAFER grant was tied to the city council, this is no doing of the city council with essentially pulling out of the agreement. I mean, I don't think it would hurt to ask to see if they would modify that language and not consider that a default of our contractual obligation.
it's something we could talk to them about and look at it, but we don't have time to do it today.
Okay, that's all I had, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Any other questions? Mr. Hashef?
Yeah, just to get further clarification on this, because clearly if we reduce the staffing during the grant period, then that triggers potentially a repayment of the SAFER grant. And as I also understand, there are kind of some off-ramps in this, and that is, obviously, if an employee transfers to Truckee Meadows, that would not be considered a layoff. We've got some, sounds to me we've got some, maybe we don't. You want to come up here and, because I understand the rule, but given that we have this dynamics here with the fire department being split, it seems to me that even though we may have a reduction, it may not automatically trigger the repayment. And in fact, we have an option where they may just cancel the award as opposed to a repayment.
Correct. For the record, Michelle Hobbs, Reno Fire Department, we specifically asked them all of these questions. The only thing that triggers default is layoff. If employees choose to separate from Reno and move to Truckee Meadows, that would not affect the SAFER grant. They would allow us to reset our baseline of the staffing we have to maintain under the grant. The only thing that would trigger default would be the layoff. They've been more than willing to work with us. We are unique in the entire nation regarding this process. Because of our contract obligation with Truckee Meadows and that it's splitting apart, this would not be direct because the city itself could not meet the obligation of the grant. It's unique in the separation of the department as it applied for the grant. So you're correct, separation. If employees choose to leave, take employment with Truckee Meadows, the existing Truckee Meadows employees go back. The separation itself does not create default. They've also said to us, because of our unique situation, if indeed we had to do some layoffs, if there was no other way to cover the expenses of the employees that the new Reno Fire Department couldn't cover, the city couldn't cover, that we would go to them with the documentable economic hardship waiver.
Right.
And because we have separated in this contract, more than willing to work with us. They were very receptive to us not being held responsible for that first year. They wouldn't want to put us in a further economic hardship of having to repay back that first year's worth of staffing.
And I'm going to build on Michelle's comments by saying that yesterday at the Board of County Commission hearing, multiple times they cited the economics as being the driver for the dissolution, which will stand in our favor if we have to proceed with a waiver. So we have discussed that thoroughly.
Even if somebody has to send a layoff notice, which generally would trigger the recapture of the grant, under our circumstances, they're willing to allow us at least to have a conversation with us so that simply sending a layoff notice doesn't automatically trigger the recapture of the grant money.
Yes, and just to reiterate, and they have gone on the record multiple times with this, they have indicated that we are the only jurisdiction facing this situation. They understand that they're unique. They will work with us to the extent possible to keep the funding. They want to see us succeed. So there's a great deal of receptiveness on their part to coming up with a solution.
And then the other question I have, can you clarify for me, let's say they make a determination that of 10 firefighters that we hired, that really one was officially laid off. That doesn't trigger recapture of the entire grant, right? It's just that one position that may have to be paid back.
It would depend on whether or not we obtained an economic hardship waiver.
Okay.
Because if we did, then they would not require us to refill the position, but they would reduce the SAFER funding by one. So we would go down
And that
depending on the waiver.
That would be prospectively, correct? From the date of the layoff?
Yes.
Okay. All right. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Any other questions? Mr. Guston?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I almost feel like I'm splitting hairs, and I don't want to do that, but let me just ask some clarifying questions, at least for me. We talked about layoffs a couple of times, and layoffs of whom? Those are the Truckee Meadows firefighters, is that what we're talking about when we talk about layoffs?
All the employees right now are City of Reno employees. The employees that came over from Truckee Meadows are in City of Reno employees. However, under the terms of the interlocal agreement, they have the option of returning back to Truckee Meadows if Truckee Meadows has a position for them.
And that's what you're saying, separate from the city. I understand that. That seems pretty clear. But, so that does not create a default, I think were your words. Okay. But the economic hardship waiver, it sounds nebulous to me. I mean, you know, we went through this earlier, I think, in the very start of the negotiations with all the bargaining groups about a hardship waiver, about how much more specificity could you give me about a hardship waiver? And I guess I'm kind of looking for a black and white answer here. What really swings that one way or the other?
I mean, the feasibility of obtaining one?
Yes.
I actually lifted the language directly from what they sent us and put it in your staff report, so it's in quotes.
Okay.
That is precisely what we will be held to. They are looking for documentable hardships that go across all public safety personnel, where we can demonstrate that our regional economics directed downsizing, and they have not given us a benchmark as to where that would be in terms of a threshold, but they have indicated a willingness to work with us in obtaining one.
And
So
I'm sorry.
sorry.
Maureen, go ahead.
No, I wanted to tell you that we did ask those questions. We attempted to obtain more concrete information. At this point, I can't provide anything else.
And again, I'm picking, and I don't mean semantically on top of you here, but some of the things you said is that we didn't trigger the action that's taken place. So that behooves us. That's more in our favor.
And the fact that it was couched in terms of an economic reason for the dissolution, that it wasn't something else, that was cited multiple times on the record yesterday.
Okay, because when you look at where we started and where we are now, the protracted negotiations, which were tedious for everybody, for the bargaining group and for the city, but we've gotten to a point. It's all about compromise, and we've gotten to the point where we have the money that we asked for, and I would just hate to see that unwound. That's the thing. I know the Councilman Dortch asked legitimate questions about, you know, how deep is the water? What are we stepping into here? Because we don't want to get over our head on this, but it seems to be a waste to, as much as we have done to this point, to some way, unless we can be somehow assured that there was a hardship waiver, the ability to get that, and so, you know, it doesn't have to be a 51-50. I'd like it to be a bigger percentage than that, because I certainly don't want to unwind this, because too many people have given too much and worked too hard to get this together. Rob, did you have a question?
I do, Councilman. Rob Boney, City Attorney's Office. We have had several conversations with SAFER. As a matter of fact, we are probably one of their pests at the moment. But there is no definition of what a documentable economic hardship is. As the folks explained to us, they're handling on a case-by-case basis because they realize that situations are changing across the country. They would not give us a definite definition of what a documentable economic hardship was. The one thing they've been crystal clear about in all of our conversations is you cannot get a documentable economic hardship waiver if you trigger a layoff notice. At that point in time, all bets are off. And we also asked them if, you know, what the odds were of them coming back to the city and asking for repayment of any funds we had received to date. And they did reserve their right to do that. So, you know, there is a little concern there.
But so you just circled around for me. You said about there's no definition. That bothers me to start with. No definitive answer to what that hardship waiver is. And then secondly, if we trigger a layoff notice, and that's where Councilman Dortch, I think, first started. So I started out saying I didn't want to split hairs, but I don't know if it's any clearer now, because we, the city of Reno, and the citizens could be in great liability.
Couple that, though, Councilman Guston, with the fact that they have always been very willing to work with us, and they've assured us that they would be willing to work with us. But the one thing they've been crystal clear on is you cannot lay off during the term of the grant.
Okay.
And we did actually at one point ask them, we gave them some statistics in terms of unemployment levels, other indicators that we've been watching, and said, In your opinion, without going through an application process, would this position us well to obtain an economic hardship waiver? Once again, they wouldn't give a definitive answer to us, but they did say that they thought that our circumstances would qualify. So, to the
We have
extent,
those names somewhere written down. Is that-
we have the
applied
names
now?
and the dates.
Okay.
Mr. Hashep, you had something?
No, I think she answered it, unless you have the waiver. You've got to get the waiver. You can't lay off
Correct.
and then ask for the waiver.
Correct.
Mr. Dortch?
Yeah, and just, I mean, so we can touch on this layoff. Chief, if, in the event, well, I mean, now that we know that this is going to happen, how many firefighters will we reduce our force by when the separation happens?
Well, that's a best guess as possible, because the way the current existing interlocal language reads, existing Truckee Meadows employees have the option of going back to the
Right, I
Truckee Meadows
understand that,
system.
but that's what I'm saying. I mean, how much would we reduce, how much would we have to reduce our force by upon the once this agreement's severed?
Okay, again, it's going to be based on how many people leave, because if 2 employees leave, we have to look at our existing budget and our staffing levels and then adjust accordingly. So if no one leaves, we have the potential of looking at anywhere from 20 to 40 positions. Again, these are very
20 to 40?
Yeah, I mean, again, because we don't know.
How much do we get supplemented by the county every year?
About $12 million.
Okay, and if we lose that $12 million, how many people are we going to have to reduce the force by?
Well, it's not exactly tied to the
It's got to be
staffing.
more than
Yeah.
20 to 40 people, though.
Correct, because what we do is we've absorbed those employees, and they're paying for a percentage of their stations being opened. The issue that we have is that when we did merge, as I understand it, when we did merge, we absorbed their employees, and of the employees that we merged, we've got anywhere from 35 to 40, I believe it's 38 existing TM employees.
Right now there are, can I?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me see if I can jump back to your question. Based on the model that we put together of what new Reno Fire Department would look like, there would be about an additional 50 line staff that would be, say, in excess. There are currently 38 line staff that have the option to go back to Truckee Meadows.
And that's
So
where I was going with this, is that there are
right.
additional people beyond who's currently with us.
Correct.
That would have to be laid off.
They have the option, goes back to what
they have to
is
go-
actually layoff.
Right.
Truckee Meadows
But-
is going to
but-
need to
but
hire some
they're gonna have to-
57 people,
Okay,
line
but they're
staff.
talking over there about having, changing the benefits package, changing the salary ranges, going to 3-man crews. What are the options that people are voluntarily going to go, oh, I want to go over there?
Well, that's, again, for the record, Mike Hernandez, Reno Fire Chief, we just don't know. We've called some of the existing TM employees, and some of them have expressed an interest in going back. Some of them have not. Some of them have been non-committal. Again, this is one of those unknowns where we just don't know who's going to go back, how many would be willing to go back. And again, facing a layoff situation, some may voluntarily elect to go out just, for the purpose of having a secure job. But again, as we move forward, this is just one of those unknowns, but there is a probability that we could potentially have to reduce our staffing levels.
And that's my point. I mean, I think for us to go into this thinking that we're going to get away from having layoffs a year from now, I think would be silly. I just don't. I don't think that's probable.
All right,
And
Mr.
that's-
Hezzy, we're going to wrap this up.
Well, a couple things. We didn't talk about how many, we might have retirements in that time frame that also may take some of those, absorb some of the hits. But the absolute worst case scenario for us would be, we accept the SAFER grants, we extend the contracts today. July 2nd, we send out layoff notices. So what would happen is we don't collect any money on the SAFER grants, actually, and we would have to kick back the 3.87% increase that the fire department is giving up, which means we would still save over $2 million in this 2-year time frame. The best case scenario would be, if with layoffs, is we go the 2 years and the last day we have to lay off. All would have saved $4 million, and we would have had to reinstate the 3.87% for that one day, and then that carries on in the future. The worst case scenario, we save $2 million.
And I'm saying, I think there's a lot of gray area here that we don't know. I think we
No,
should
we
have
do-
the conversation.
we do know that.
But I think we should have the conversation with the IAFF and say, in this situation where we don't have control over it, can you agree that, under this scenario only, that all the concessions you've given up to get the 4896, to get the paramedics definition, to get everything that they wanted, and still tell us no to three-man crews to open other stations, to get everything they wanted, can't you agree that since this is out of our control, that those reductions would continue? I think it's worth having that conversation.
I think in all the discussions we've had, they've also given everything we've asked.
Three-man crews.
They're the only union we've asked for 7.5%. They're the only ones who came and gave us 7.5%.
But they get 2 days on, 4 days off now.
And how does that hurt you?
It might, at Station 1, it could be devastating.
Could be, but that's why we put it in there, that if it doesn't do what it's expected to do by December of next year, it's back on the table.
No, it has nothing to do it has nothing to do
It has to
with
do
the
with
4896 shift.
If they save their sick time more, it's back on the table.
That's the only way it's
So
back
you've
on
got-
the table.
you've got no-
I mean, they could have safety issues
But
from
what you-
drivers working a 48-hour shift.
You
working-
can't have it both ways. You can't say, I don't like Sparks's shifts, because that's unsafe, but you want Sparks's three-man crews. You either decide.
No, we said we would go 4896 if we had three-man crews, and they said
I'm
no.
just saying, this is the only union that's done everything we've asked them to do as far as the monetary, the fiscal part of it, and they came forward before June 30th of this year.
Okay.
And I'm going to stand behind this one. I think
I'm
fiscally,
just
we're saving
saying,
$2 million, no
I-
matter what happens.
And I think we should
save
ask for that clarification.
Okay. Well, we will ask for the clarification, probably not before we take a vote, so.
But after the vote, they don't have to do anything. I mean, it's,
Well, that brings up one more question, Mr. Mayor. What do they have to do now?
Nothing.
I mean, were they required to do anything? We'd go through 2 years of negotiations, and they weren't required to do anything, were they?
Nope.
In terms of giving
Negotiating
anything,
with us. We could go through all
No.
this stuff and we get nothing?
you know, we just have to, and they have to abide by the requirements in 288.
Right. But we wouldn't save the 2 million, we wouldn't save the 4 million, and they wouldn't get their different shift change. So to me, everybody got something out of this that, anyway.
All right, I'm going to bring it back to the table now. We've discussed it quite a bit and gone through it. Mr. Azzi or Mr. Heshef, would you give me a motion?
We're going to do one of these at a time, right? I think we've pretty
Yes,
much
sir.
discussed all of them through B1 through B3.
Can we do that, counsel?
Tracy Chase, Reno City Attorney's Office. We would recommend that you open the public hearing
Oh, I
on
will
each
do
item
that.
because
I
you
will
do
do that.
need to have that information.
Let me have-
And also, for the record, we have double-checked that the materials, the support materials, because the staff report indicated when that was delivered to council that the contracts were available at the clerk's office. When those contracts arrived at the clerk's office, they were available to council and to the public at the same time.
Okay, all right. Mr. Heshef,
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're on the same page. As I understand it from...
we're going to do them one at a time.
Correct. And all the questions have been asked with respect to B1 through B3, right?
We have one public comment
Right.
on B2 and B3, and so I might as well get out of the way on, huh?
Well, I mean, the SAFER grant is C1.
Yes.
But anyway, if there's no public comment on B1, I'm going to move
Already
to
done it.
accept staff recommendation to move forward with that approval.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second. Further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose, no. Ms. Fraza, did you hear us?
I vote aye, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Show the vote, 5-1, 6-1. No, 5-1. 5-1. All right, item B2. I have as company, Mr. Dene. I'll give you 4 minutes to talk about 2 and 3.
Wow, that's great. Sam Dene, the Encyclopedia of Reno Government. I really only want maybe 1 minute total, and I just, not to be redundant, but I still think that you're putting the blame on the wrong people. But after that being said, I think that this is a good deal that everybody agrees with, except for yesterday's frog that was thrown on the table over there at the county commission, where they voted to basically disband the fire department and have them go their separate ways. I would think that what you should do is let the citizens decide whether they want to disband the fire department. It's a big deal. We have a special election coming up in 4 months already, and we could put this on as an item on a special election, and he's saying no. The city attorney is saying no. Now he's nodding his head. He's agreeing that I said he said no. Okay. He's getting dizzy. Anyway, okay, so we can't do that. I thought that would be a good idea, is let the citizens decide this, because it really is a terrible dilemma. And I tend to think that the firefighters themselves would be willing to, most of them would be willing to recognize the trepidation that's involved in what just happened yesterday, because it just changed everything. They already agreed to what they were going to do, and for the folks out in TV land, what's in jeopardy here is a $2 million grant from the federal government that is sort of needed to allow this deal to go down. And maybe you could postpone this just a little bit until next week and get together and ask those guys what happens if they pull that grant or throw a couple of new things in here, because the decision that you made for today that you are going to vote on, this decision was made, these voting requirements were put together before yesterday's vote by the county commission, and it just changed everything. So I think maybe you should get together, postpone this one more week, and analyze it. But I still continue to say that there's a lot of other areas that should be looked at besides this.
Thank you very much. All right, item B2, Mr. Hashepper.
Yeah, just to summarize a little bit, Mr. Mayor, I understand where Dwight's coming from. At least for me, I get an additional 10 firefighters if we move forward with the SAFER grant. And I know B2 is not the SAFER grant, but it's been tied into the discussion. And then I do want to thank staff for a great job of kind of managing the risk on this. And so I'm comfortable with the staff's at least explanation that there's enough off-ramps, including the waiver, that the chances of us having to give back some of these increases is at least manageable. So with that understanding, Mr. Mayor, at least with B2, I would move forward with the staff recommendation to approve the amendments to the contract.
Okay, I have a motion, I have a second. Madam Secretary, before I call for a vote, all the notices were sent and...
Yes, Mr. Mayor, proper notice was given, no correspondence was received.
Okay. Everybody's spoken. Yes, Mr. Guston.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I stated earlier, a lot of people have put a lot of sweat equity into this and hard work. I agree with Councilman Ayazi in that the local 731 has given what was asked of them. However, I think there's been a new slippery field put in on this by yesterday, and I just feel uncertain and a little worried about what could happen. I know Councilman Hascheff said he feels comfortable about the waiver. Personally, I don't. I just don't feel comfortable about that. And I think layoffs may come. We don't have that. I wanted this public forum so everybody knows what we're faced with. Hopefully, and it doesn't get convoluted or turned around. I too congratulate staff and the bargaining unit for working together, because they worked harder than anybody to get this done. Both of you did. I just don't feel comfortable with what is facing us without knowing and having the opportunity to talk to the other side about what their feelings are and what their acceptance of that would be. So that slippery slope is a little too slippery for me right now.
All right, I have a motion, I have a second.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. Before the vote is taken, we are required by 288 or NRS to post the numbers and the cost for the contract for the 2 years.
Okay.
Sorry, the whole item can't fit on the screen, but the bottom line is that the cost for the contract for each year is $29,094,601, and that's for 11-12 and then 12-13.
Okay, I have a motion and second.
Yeah,
Any
just by
further
way of
discussion? Yes.
clarification, Mr. Mayor, in response to Councilman Guston's comment, you're correct. I think the waiver is an additional safety net. I think the fact that we've got the potential for transfers and a few other off-ramps that don't really qualify as layoffs gives us some other opportunities to move forward with the additional 10 firefighters. So again, I'm just comfortable. I'm glad what staff did. I think they did a very good job of managing the risk. So with that understanding, I'm going to support going forward.
Mr. Azzi.
Mr. Mayor, I'm also going to support this because I believe that the union came forward to address our concerns about that by not making it retroactive. That was what we went back to them and said, you know, if you don't make this retroactive, we might support this. That to me was the change that happened. So we're not on such a slippery slope for me, Dan. So that's why I'm going to support this.
Okay, Ms. Frazee, do you have anything?
Mr. Mayor, yeah, just a couple things. I think that, you know, we haven't had a contract for the past year, and Councilman Ayazi is correct when he said, essentially, by not approving this, the current contract stays. So essentially what they're giving up, even if something were to happen with a SAFER grant, the reductions that they're taking essentially pay for that SAFER grant. So they've done what we've asked them to do. I think on a side note, Councilman Ayazi did a great job bringing them to the table as well. And so I'm going to support the contract.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, no.
No.
Show the vote 4-2. All right, item B3, Ms. Zedra, you can come back now. Oh, there you are. All right, item B3, approval of collective bargaining agreement between the City of Reno and the Reno Fire Department administrators.
Mr. Mayor, Tracy Chase, would you please open the public hearing?
Yes, I will.
And for the record, proper notice was given, no correspondence was received on that.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, City Manager Rene Runges, Director of Human Resources. The item you have before you is the approval of an agreement between the City of Reno and the Reno Fire Administrator. Oh, thank you. Sorry, wrong costing sheet. Can you put it up? B3.
Can't read it anyway, so go ahead and put it up there.
Thank you. You have before you the agreement between the Reno Fire Administrators Association and the City of Reno, and it calls for a 0 increase in salary. The agreement is from July 1st, 2010 through June 30th of 2013. The RFDAA has agreed to take out of their contract the requirement that there be 5 division chiefs and have only 4 division chief, and that will save the city $236,884 per year for the next 2 years. And the total cost for this contract for each year is $2,981,169.
Okay. Any questions?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I do have questions.
Go ahead.
The total contract for the RFDAA, if I'm reading the staff report correctly, is $2.9 million a year.
That's
Is that
correct.
That's
That's
right.
correct.
Renee, on that, can you tell me if how many employees are in this bargaining unit?
I believe there are 13 or 14 employees in this unit.
So how much is that per cost of for $2.9 million per employee in this contract?
Okay, somebody whip out the calc.
Yeah.
$229,000.
$229,000.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Mr. Mayor, just a comment on this. I have a real problem with this contract. Here we have the firefighters. We just spent, 30 minutes debating about the SAFER grant and the firefighters, but yet our battalion chiefs, the highest paid employees in the city of Reno, are not willing to take a pay reduction. They're willing to give up a division chief position. And I just think that's wrong. $228,000 average per employee, and the rest of our employees we're asking to give 7.5%, and I'm just extremely disappointed. And I just want on the record that I just think it's wrong that the rank and file can come forward and they're not doing anything.
Okay. Any comments? Any other comments? Yeah, a little response from staff.
The city had asked each employee group for 7.5% salary plus salary-related benefits. During the course of discussions with all of the groups, the issues of offering other things other than other contractual items as in lieu of salary reductions has been discussed at every table. And in this case, one of the issues was a staffing requirement in the labor agreement, and that staffing requirement was a hindrance to the chief of the department in his or her operation, that they would be able to manage the department as they saw fit. And having a requirement of a certain number of employees in a certain classification makes it more difficult operationally.
Chief, you got any remarks?
For the record, Mike Hernandez, Reno Fire Chief. Actually, I don't, Your Honor. I believe that the association was approached with a percentage to reach, and although I did not sit at the table, I believe they met that percentage. It's kind of where we are.
You don't see any issues with safety because we're going from 5 to 4?
No, sir.
So
No, sir.
operationally, it's better.
Well, it doesn't restrict me in terms of a minimum number,
Right.
correct? So.
Ms. Adru? Oh, I thought you had a question. Mr. Azzi?
Chief, with this minimum staffing, you just brought up something. Wouldn't that save on overtime that we don't have to have so many people there?
At that upper level, at the division chief's rank, that's correct.
So, but we haven't monetized what that's going to be as far as the savings, or is that included in this, just getting rid of that?
I don't think we've run those numbers, sir.
But it should save us on some overtime because we're not required to have, call in people, call them back.
At the division chief's level,
not.
there's not a whole lot of overtime because their overtime is built into the callback, et cetera. It's at the battalion chief's level. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right. Any further discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry. Can I just ask one other question for clarification from staff, and I guess for Renee?
You sure can.
Renee, are they taking 1 penny out of their paycheck by what they're offering to the city of Reno?
There is no salary reduction for any of the employees in the unit. That's correct.
So our employees who are making over $200,000 can't afford to give back to the city of Reno a reduction in pay. Just a comment, Mr. Mayor. I'm not expecting staff to comment on that, but
Okay.
again.
All right. Thank you. All right. Anybody got a motion? Mr. Azzi?
I'll make a motion, then I'll have a comment, Mr. Mayor. I'll make a motion that we approve staff recommendation on this, and that we retain our rights under SB 98 in the future.
Do I have a second? I have a second. Discussion.
Yeah, I'm going to support the motion, Mr. Mayor, because they did hit the target, and that's what we're looking for from all of our bargaining organizations. We told them there's a number, and they achieved the number to get there. So I'm going to support the motion.
Any others? Ms. Zadru?
My feeling is similar to what Mr. Hashef said. we asked for a number of all departments, and in most cases, they've come up with a combination of ways, not just in salary, to get us where we need it to be. I absolutely agree with the disappointment that Ms. Ferrazza described. I think that they weren't as forthgiving and preserving their $200,000 salaries, but they met the number. Unfortunately, they didn't see it in their graces to take any kind of a salary cut, as every single other employee has, but they met the figure that we needed.
And that's probably the only reason I'll support that. I mean, they did make what they said they would, but I am also disappointed they didn't take some pay cuts. Yes. Sir?
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, that's right.
Mr.
Yeah.
Mayor, I'm going to support the motion. I think this is strategic or tactical. It's my personal opinion that they are going to fall under this SB 98.
Yep.
And that we should be doing something like that on this, and this comes into this effect. I'm also very disappointed that they chose not to take any reductions in pay. What they did do is sacrifice one of their own in a vacant position, which sort of tells me we never needed that person in the first place. So you wonder how much the city's paid all this time when they kept saying, we need people, we need people, we need people for safety, 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 and then when it comes time for them to take a reduction, unlike 731, who wants to keep people on, they say, well, we don't really think that's a necessary position. So it makes you wonder in previous negotiations how we were there, whether we really needed all these people, and now it makes me wonder whether I even need 4. Makes you wonder, do you need 2? Do we need them at all? I mean, and I think that's the next thing to come forward is, if I don't need as many as we had, do I need as many as I have now? And that's the next discussion, I think.
All right, we now have a motion and second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose, no.
No.
Show the vote 6-1.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Are you leaving?
I am.
Oh, come on.
Got to get back in there.
All right.
Thank you. Have
Good
a
luck
great
to
time.
you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Item C1. Acceptance, discussion, potential direction on the SAFER grant. I think we've hashed that pretty good. Anybody got any questions? Any new questions? Chair will entertain a motion.
Move to approve, Mr. Mayor.
Second. Have a motion, second. Now, could she vote?
Mr. Mayor, Tracy Chase, Reno City Attorney's Office. This is a general budgetary item and
Okay.
doesn't affect any particular individual that would be related to council member.
All right. Okay, I have a motion, second discussion. Mr. Dortch.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, it might surprise some people, but I'm actually going to support this motion. And I'm going to support it because my issues were more related to the contract and what's going to happen if we lose this. I mean, now that that issue is resolved, this does let us hire 10 firefighters as soon as we accept this. And I'm hopeful that in the event we do default on this, that we don't have to pay back prior to. I think staff feels pretty comfortable that that probably won't happen, even if we do have layoffs, correct?
That is correct.
So if a year from now we default on the SAFER grant, you feel pretty comfortable that we won't have to pay back the prior years, but we just wouldn't have it going forward.
We did ask DHS, and for the record, Maureen McKissick again, I'm sorry. We did ask DHS that repeatedly. On several occasions, they said that yes, that would in fact be what happened because they would not wish to impose further economic hardship on us, but they would not give us that in writing. So I want to make that clear.
I understand that, but I mean, it sounds to me that there's a fairly strong level of confidence that that won't happen.
They
And
have
this
been
does let
extremely.
us, and this will let us open another station, correct, Chief? So, I mean, in that sense, I'll support this.
All right, Mr. Gusson, you had something?
Very similar. I am also going to support it because of one key line in the staff report, the grant application for 10 rehire firefighters. And so that's what it's about. We talked about as many boots as we can, as many people working as we possibly can, especially in public safety. So I hope the other slippery slope I talked about doesn't occur and we end up with egg in our face or at least money to pay back. But I'm all in favor of hiring more people.
Well, I have enough faith in the organization to think everybody can work together. So I have a motion and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. Item C2.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor. Mike Hernandez, Reno Fire Chief. At yesterday's Board of County Commissioners meeting, acting as the Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District Board, commissioners did vote 4-1 to serve notice to the city regarding the interlocal agreement with the City of Reno and the Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District. I sent the council a quick summary memo this morning, and in essence what the commission did was voted to discontinue the interlocal agreement for a variety of reasons based on economics. They did point out, and they were very vocal on a variety of issues, of which I've captured. Specifically, they are reluctant to utilize fund balances for the continued operations of the contract. They are seeking greater control over Truckee Meadows Fire Department policy. They have a desire to, the board has a desire to negotiate directly with labor groups. And they were concerned with staffing. And the last concern that they noted was the issue of annexation credits. All of these contributed to their decision to vote to not renew the contract. As such, late yesterday evening, I directed staff to develop a transition plan to include capital and non-capital asset divisions. I have expressed a concern to the city manager's office that we immediately need to engage the city legal department to provide us guidance in what our dissolution process should constitute. We've got a variety of issues that we're going to have to address: dispatching issues, grant management issues, and just a whole host of issues that we're going to have to address. So that is our path forward. As this council directs updates and information, I will provide that in a timely manner. However, I will provide periodic updates in terms of where we are with the separation process, and we're just going to move forward in the best possible way that we can. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Okay. Questions right now of the chief? I think that as we go forward, Chief and Mr. Manager, as we go forward, the fire service members of that committee should be involved with any discussions from the city council and how we're going to organize and go forward. So that would be Mr. Azzi and Ms. Zadra, and we'll go forward. But I want them included in any discussions. Okay?
Yes, sir. And I'd like to take this quick opportunity. Since I've arrived and taken this position, this was an ongoing process.
Yes.
And I got to tell you that Michelle Hobbs, the Reno command staff, and city legal, Gayla, Emery, they've done just an incredible job. We have invested just incredible amounts of staff time in working on the interlocal agreement. And of course, Councilmember Ayazi and Councilperson Zadra, as members of the Joint Fire Advisory Board, providing direction. It's unfortunate that we have to go down this road. I have expressed concerns, both the county commissioners and the fire services coordinator, that there are areas in the outlying regions that are going to see increased response times and a decreased level of service. But those are issues that we will hopefully address as we go down this road. But it has been a learning experience for me, and the team, the city manager's office, legal, everybody that's been a part of the negotiation processes has put in incredible amounts of time and work, and they deserve a level of recognition for that.
Well, it's still mind-boggling to me when you save $40 to $50 million over the last 10 years, both city and county, how we're blowing up like this. And it really disappoints me that it's come to this, but if it is, that's fine. They can have their fire wagons back, and they didn't want to buy two a couple of years ago, so they can have those old rigs back and buy some more. I don't think they've done a real study on what it's going to cost them and the extra time it's going to cost for response going to the outlying areas. And it's very disappointing, but if that's the way they want to go, let them go, and we'll work with them, see if we can patch it up. If not, we'll run our show as efficiently as we can. Chair, Mr. Isaac.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, it just boggles me why they're doing this. I've been trying to figure it out because they've really had no public reason as to why. I found this morning actually the Washoe County Fire Services survey that they did less than 2 years ago, and that showed that 87% of the people in Sierra Firefront and Washoe County, this wasn't including the city of Reno or Sparks, thought that the fire service was good or excellent, 87%.
87%.
It also said that 50% of them would be willing to pay more for better service. And would they be willing to pay for more to keep the same service? And they said yes. So they're not even looking, so they're not looking at fire service. They're not looking at money because it saved them a lot of money. I can only come down to two things. There are people who can change government, and this is the people in the Sierra Firefront District. People who live at Arrow Creek and Galena are the only ones who are complaining. And they want Washoe County to subsidize them. I mean, we all know that that's a hole that's can't be filled in, and so they need to find someone to save them, and they think that Washoe County is going to be it. So they're blaming the city of Reno for all that, but that's okay. But they have not reduced their level of service one bit. They said they were going to a hole. We knew we were going into a hole, so we've been reducing our service levels. They haven't had to reduce their service levels because of this contract. So not only have they not raised their taxes in this 11 years, I believe they actually reduced their taxes by a penny in these last 11 years and got the same level of service that they've always gotten, even though things have been escalating in costs. So they can't blame costs. They've always had 4-person crews that entire time. What happened is, I think it's a blatant attempt by some of the commissioners to do union busting. That's obviously what this is going on to do. And I just don't understand why they didn't want to have a joint meeting with us. They canceled the last joint fire advisory board meetings. And yet yesterday they're saying, we think in the next 6 weeks we'll start moving forward with forming a district. Why on God's green earth would I meet with somebody who is dishonorable as those people have been? I'm telling you, the county commissioners in this instance could have come and talked to us about this. We could have had a joint meeting and discussed all these issues, but they continue at their meetings to bash the city of Reno, even though we provided great fire service to them and their constituents. They have nothing to put a leg on. I don't think that they're very honorable. I'll say that right now. I think that the contract, they didn't talk to us about it the way they should have to see if there are any problems. In 11 years, I think I've been on the fire advisory board almost the entire time. Not one time have they ever lodged a complaint against how the contract was being delivered. Not one time did they come forward and say, here's what you guys said you'd do. You haven't done it. We've done everything they've said, but they listened to people in Arrow Creek who can't afford their own fire station and are getting a subsidy right now from the Washoe County Fire Protection District to subsidize their fire station they want to put there. And they're the ones who want to close the station in Washoe Valley and move that. But Washoe Valley thinks it's the city of Reno doing that. It's Sierra Firefront District. So all this is being bandied about, and they're very fortunate they have the city of Reno to blame it all on. But I think we're in a good position to move forward, even though they choose to get out of this, that we've made the reductions we've had to make. Unions have come forward the way they've had to come forward. It just boggles my mind, and if they can give you a rational excuse. But they did tell us in the letter they sent us, it's all fiscal, which means they didn't look at what's the best way to provide service to the citizens. It's all about money. So I think the only thing that we have to do, if it's about money, then let's look at our interlocal agreements that we have from now on, how we provide our services to the unincorporated county. I think the chief told me once the closest fire station to Hidden Valley is Sun Valley. So if someone in Hidden Valley gets their house on fire, I don't know what they're going to do. But those aren't the things they talked about. They talked about Galena and Arrow Creek, and I think it's a shame.
Ms. Zadra.
Mr. Ayazi expressed the fire advisory meetings for the last 2 years exactly, accurately. We never heard any kind of discontent, except, Dave, probably the only discontent we heard was along about November, December, when we were hoping to have had the contract review completed, and staff just couldn't pull together all the information in time. That was the only time they expressed discontent. So theoretically, had we met the time frame, the time demand that we had originally agreed to and had this contract agreed to in November or December, we wouldn't be having this discussion today. They were ready in November and December to have this done and to go forward for another couple of years. What changed in 6 months that they never communicated, I'm not sure we'll ever know.
I think one of the things when they took over Sierra from the state, they never raised the taxes in the unincorporated, so they kept digging a hole instead of raising their tax and paying for it. But there's a lot of things, but let's keep an open mind and we'll work forward, going forward with them and stuff like that. So what do we want to do as far as direction? Yes, comment? Well, yes, come up, Dennis. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council folk, Mr. Klinger, welcome. Dennis Jacobson, President, Reno Firefighters Association. Yes, I do have a quick comment, but first a thank you for your actions on B1 and B2. It's been a long time coming, a lot of hard work by everybody, but I want to acknowledge our association's thanks for everybody and all the comments, and I believe it's going to give us a very good foundation to move forward.
We want to thank you also for taking leadership and doing the things, making some changes you had to make, and working with us and stuff. And sure, we've argued back and forth, and we've thrown a couple of rocks at each other, but thank you and the association for working with us. We appreciate it.
No problem, Mr. Mayor. With respect to the item before you, I was as well at the meeting yesterday. I am in much alignment with Councilman Ayazi. I don't understand with all of the savings. I was in many of the legislative meetings down in Carson this year where these savings were acknowledged by the county. And our citizens. I am actually a county resident. I believe that I'm getting a very good service, and the actions yesterday as a county resident concerned me. I just want to pledge 731's assistance. We will work with fire administration. There's going to be a lot ahead of us in making these adjustments. As I said, everything is so new right now. Nobody has the answers, and you've made a number of them, Councilman Dortch, that we're going to have to address. But we'll work at our level with the chief and with the administration. I'm very concerned that the county commission made this decision. It was brought out quite well in the public comments yesterday that there are a number, I believe one of them said 47 assumptions that are being made on their side that with no plan B. I think it was the way it was worded. I fully agree with that. So I don't understand why we're going down this route, because it was a very workable system. It has proven itself over and over. It was a model for this state. But just have your assurances here on the record that 731 will work through our committees with the fire chief and his designees to support the city of Reno's needs. Thank you.
We appreciate you very much. Thank you. All right.
Move to accept the report.
That's all we can do. Motion and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. Oh, item 3 sounds like another one of those deals. Item C3, approval of amendment number 3, cooperative agreement between the city of Reno, Washoe County, and the city of Sparks on the Community Assistance Center. Yes, ma'am.
I will just answer questions if you have any. Largely, it's just a 60-day extension of the current details in the current cooperative agreement with the identification of funding for the next 12 months from all 3 jurisdictions.
2 months? 60 days?
60 days.
Okay. All right. Have a motion?
Move to accept.
Have a motion. Do I have a second? Have a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. Item C4. That would be another continuance.
Yes, just an extension. Jody Royal Goodwin, Community Reinvestment Manager for the record. Just an extension of the contract with Volunteers of America for the 60-day extension of the cooperative agreement as well.
Move to accept staff recommendation.
Have a motion second. All in favor say aye. Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. Item C5.
Resolution number 7609, resolution ratifying an administrative interpretation clarifying the phrase advertising or promoting the interests of any person, persons, firm, corporation, or other entity as set forth in the definition of off-premise advertising display in the Reno Municipal Code 18.24.203 and other matters properly relating thereto.
Have a motion second. Have a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. Item C6.
Resolution number 7610, resolution ratifying an administrative interpretation clarifying the phrase advertising or promoting the interests of any person, persons, firm, corporation, or other entity within the definition of the word sign as set forth in the Reno Municipal Code 18.24.203 and other matters properly relating thereto.
Have a motion. Do I have a second? Second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. Item C7.
Resolution number 7611, resolution directing staff to reject applications and/or refuse to issue building permits for new land uses, proposing permanent off-premises advertising displays, billboards, regulated by Reno Municipal Code Title 14, Buildings and Construction, Chapters 14.16, Sign Code, and Title 18, Annexation and Land Development. Chapter 18.16, Signs, commencing immediately and continuing through the duration of any moratorium ordinances, prohibiting the acceptance of applications and/or the issuance of building permits for new land uses, proposing permanent off-premises advertising displays, billboards, regulated by the Reno Municipal Code, Title 14, Building and Construction, Chapter 14.16, Sign Code, and Title 18, Annexation and Land Development, Chapter 14.16, Signs and other matters properly relating thereto.
Have a motion, second. All in favor say aye.
Marilyn
Would
Craig.
you like to say something?
Yes, please.
Okay, go ahead.
Marilyn Craig, Deputy City Attorney. There is a blank in the resolution as to how long you would like this moratorium to continue. We would recommend that it be through the Friday after your second meeting in October of 2011.
October 31st?
October 31st works.
Okay.
And then also, we would like to add just a couple of extra words at the end of the resolution, and which says, "and others similarly situated."
Marilyn, and I'll amend my motion to include that. The people that have their bank boards, are they going to expire during that time frame at all?
I believe that the first expiration is 2012.
Okay, so there's no issue as far as them not being able to, after this moratorium is
No.
lifted?
I'm not aware that there is, and this gives us time. If we needed to amend this, we could come back and amend this, but I don't believe there's an issue until 2012.
Okay, and we could, if we had to, extend their time frame if needed?
Yes, we put in there, unless extended otherwise by council.
Extend the time frame for the banked boards, I mean.
No, that would take an ordinance change.
Okay. But we could do that.
But
if
you
we
can
needed
do it,
to.
yes, if you wish to do it,
If
yes.
this had a negative impact on them.
Yes.
Be prepared in case we have to.
Okay, I will be.
I haven't heard anything to that effect.
I hadn't either, but I want to make sure.
Thank you.
All right, motion and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. Item C8, discussion, state legislation and other matters relating to. Hey, you're starting to look alive again. You're getting a little color now, now that you're out of those dark doldrums down there.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'm feeling good.
Good.
For the record, Cadence Matievich, Legislative Relations Program Manager. At the last meeting, as I gave my final report, there was a couple of meetings pertaining to the a couple of bills pertaining to the open meeting law that Councilman Ayazi had inquired about. I believe the council has received a memorandum from the city attorney's office detailing the provisions of those bills, and at this time it is anticipated that there is really only one change that will be required to our process for which the council would need to take action. That item was detailed in the staff report. I don't know if Ms. Chase, if you wanted to make any comments.
Tracy Chase, Reno City Attorney's Office. A change in the open meeting law will be how council desires to take its public comment. There are two options available to you. One is an option that sets forth the public comment section at the beginning and at the end of an agenda. In addition, the council, you recall, you have public hearing requirements as well, which would always be instituted. The other option is to take public comment on each and every agenda item. If you do that, the law states that the public comment has to be taken at a particular point in your meeting, and that would be at the time after you have a motion and a second and before the vote is taken. Either one is legal. If you want to do additional public comment, that is also legal too. Those are minimum requirements. So however you would like to do that, we will make sure your agendas comply with your direction as of the 1st of July.
We've always let them speak before, and I don't know of any time that, since I've been mayor, that we don't allow them to speak on different items as we go through. So I don't see any big changes. The number one is to let them have comment at the end if they want to.
So it'd be,
Mr. Dortch.
yeah, so we'd have public comment at the beginning like we always do,
Yep.
public comment at the end, and then we would just decide to continue to have public comment on each individual item.
That would definitely meet the minimum qualifications because the beginning and the end is the only minimum required public comment you have to have. The public comment on each item is at the discretion of council.
We've let them do it before. Mr. Hazzard.
Yeah, I agree with that, but to put on the public record, I think I know the answer. Could the same person speak under both the public input areas at the start and at the end?
Tracy Chase, again, Reno City Attorney's Office. The law also allows us to put reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions on public comment. No matter what selection you chose, we were going to recommend to put on agenda a reasonable time, place, and manner restriction so that you only get one opportunity for public comment, general public comment, so you don't have repetitive general public comment. In addition, though, if you do on an action item, if they want to then speak in the first public comment on that action item, they would not get a second opportunity when council calls that item to provide additional public comment. So you get one chance at the public comment.
Then I don't know whether we can change that or not, because I always thought that under public comment you can speak about anything you want, whether it's an agenda item or not, and then that wouldn't preclude me from being able to speak on the agenda item. So I could speak twice. I could read the same letter.
Council at its discretion could do that, but you could put a reasonable time, place, and manner restriction so you don't have repetitive public comment where people are repeating and giving the same comments that they just provided to you.
Well, today was a good instant where a guy spoke in public comment, came back later and spoke on the same thing again.
I don't know if we need a motion on this to move forward, which one we're going to take.
If you would provide some direction, or our recommended one, or the mayor one he was indicating would be option one, we'd go ahead and put the public comment at the beginning and the end. We can go ahead and do that for your July 6th agenda, and you can see how you like it, and then you can always change your mind.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I just want to clarify how often they can talk, because, Mr. Mayor, you're right, we've always allowed as much as we wanted, and it seems whenever there's a conversation about this, like I'm doing right now, we spend more time talking about whether they're allowed to do it than just let them speak the 3 minutes again. Just let them do it.
That's right. That's right. That's why when I first came here, that's why I started letting them do it, so we didn't have the arguments all the time. So they'd be able to speak and stuff. So, okay. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Mayor, to my recollection, this item was the only one specifically that we were asked to bring back information at this meeting. So if the council has questions on other bills that passed during the session, I'd be pleased to answer those at this time. Otherwise, I'll go take my seat.
Got anything else you want to bring up?
I understood there were some, maybe staff wasn't tracking it, but there were some progress was made on short sales and giving folks, since we have so many residential foreclosures here, do you have any opinions on what happened?
Yes, Councilman Hascheff, there were a number of measures that had to do with foreclosures, home mortgages, the banking industry. There were 2 bills that were passed and signed by the governor. I'm not recalling the exact number of the Assembly bill. I believe the Senate bill was SB 414. I can follow up and get those back to you. Those had to do with deficiency judgments on mortgages. There were some qualifications on the type of mortgages that where financial institutions had limits or would no longer be able to have a deficiency judgment in the case of a short sale, or what was called a foreclosure sale, which included what's commonly known as a short sale or a deed in lieu of foreclosure. Again, there were some qualifying things that had to be, the mortgage had to have been taken out to purchase the home. The mortgage holder had to have lived in, it had to be a primary residence. They had to have lived in the home the entire time. So one of them had to do with first mortgages and the other one had to do with junior mortgages.
I guess where I'm going with this is I would like a copy of that because I know it's an important issue to this community, and I don't know if we have any plans to put it up on our website, but at least inform the public that they have some options now that they didn't have before.
Certainly, Councilman, I'd be pleased to get you copies of those bills, and we'll work with staff to get those posted on our website.
That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, can I?
Yes, Mr. Guston.
Ms. Matievich, can I ask you the clarification on the cell phone bill? Does that take effect on July 1st?
Councilman, yes, the effective bill of the date is July 1st. However, there are provisions in the legislation having to do with when citations can begin being issued and what the penalties will be. My understanding is beginning July 1st that the police officers may issue warnings through the end of the year, and then beginning January 1st is when citations that would have a fine associated with them would go into effect, and those fines vary depending upon the numbers of citations. Your first citation is a lower amount than if you're caught doing it multiple times.
Thank you.
Another California law. It's a great law, don't misunderstand me, but it's another one of California. We got to quit adopting California laws. Anyway, we're now, thank you very much.
Certainly, thank you.
All right. Boards and commission appointments, Reno Access.
That's me, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
There are 3 vacancies into the board yesterday. The board moved forward Gary Mokahu, I believe his last name is pronounced, Christopher Lansky, and James Giacovelli. So I'll move to appoint those 3.
Okay, I have motion second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries unanimously. Urban Forestry.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we'll keep advertising for the new applications, but I will reappoint Deidre Kennelly, whose term is about to expire.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. Financial Advisory Board.
Jason Norris, Mr. Mayor.
All right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. Civil Service Commission.
Reappoint Bertha Mullins, please.
Okay, have a motion second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. Ward 1 Advisory Board.
I will appoint the following 3 people: Brian Bass, Janelle Thomas, and Paul Gordon.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. Recreation and Parks.
We still need to advertise for the 1 vacancy, but Franco Cravelli, his term is due to expire, and I always love saying his name, so I'm going to renominate him.
Second.
Okay. I'm glad you get to pronounce it instead of me. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. Item C10, discussion potential direct staff regarding the privatization of certain functions, including but not limited to the city fleet operations, park maintenance, and snow removal. Who wants to have that discussion?
I'll jump in, Mr. Mayor.
All right.
Yeah, this is something we've talked about quite a bit over the last year, is looking at all of our functions and seeing if we are competitive. Go out to the market and take a look at this and see. I think we tried taking the park maintenance out a few months ago, but I think it was such a limited piece of what we do that I think we need to look at it on a broader scale. So from my standpoint, I think, I don't know how we want to move forward, and maybe Andrew can jump in, but I think we want to analyze how we want to go out to RFP on these items. Clearly, as our departments will be competing for this business also, but at the end of the day, we need to look and see to make sure that we're being competitive. So
I would think that we'd have the city manager look in, see if there's people that would be interested, and then put together an RFP or something. Mr. Guston.
You know, Mr. Mayor, if that's the wish of the council, I don't have a problem with that, but I think that the RFP has got to be pretty well defined, Mr. Klinger, simply because the gentleman has spoken public comment before. When you look at the amount of work that's done over the broad section of vehicles and equipment that they're responsible for, There may be somebody out there, and I'm not saying they're not, and it behooves us to try to save as much money as we can for the taxpayers, but I think that has to be pretty well structured and stipulated that when you talk from a Zamboni to a police car, I mean, that's a pretty wide disparity of skills that you need to have to do that. So I would certainly, as Councilman Dortch has asked a couple of times, go take a look at that. But again, I'd scrutinize that pretty heavily when looking at the RFP and who responds to it.
Absolutely.
And I think, too, I mean, it's not listed as one of the ones on here, but it also says others, including but not limited to these. Sparks just privatized their street sweeping. And I think that's why we had snow removal on here, because with us, street sweeping and snow removal kind of go hand in hand. I think it'd be worth looking at maybe even the company, maybe piggybacking on the company that bid on Sparks, or at least look at that to see if we could get both pieces. I think the challenge there is that our street sweepers, and I don't know if we've got anyone here that can answer that, but I think who we use for street sweeping is also who we use for snow removal. So we'd have to manage through that. But I think, in my opinion, all this is on the table, and let's go out and see if we're competitive.
Maybe we could even contract with another city or the county or somebody else if we looked at doing it. Okay.
Just
Mr.
by way of,
Heshoff.
because we do have a competition for services policy and program. So would this be to go out and kind of re-look at that policy and then have the city manager come back to us? Because I do agree with Dan. It's not just saving money, it's quality of service that we want to preserve as well. So I assume we're either come back with a modified competition for services policy, or what's the, I see the agenda item, but what's kind of the protocol that we're going to follow?
Well, I mean, if we have to modify that to do this, then obviously we would make changes to that. Clearly, what we put in the RFP are the standards that we want to see. I mean, so I think we can control that quality of service through the RFP process.
Right, so the only thing I tell the city manager is we've got a policy in place, so we need to look at that as well, because that has served as some guidance for the last several years. That's my only comment, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Before we take an action, Alan Coldine? Coldan, I'm sorry. That's you? Yeah. Come on up, Alan. I'm sorry I butchered your name.
That's all right. Alan Koldani is my name. I came for this item. It's unbelievable how nerve-wracking this is. But
that's all right. Take your time.
All right.
No problem.
I would just like to say, I guess to Mr. Klinger, everyone else does this. The Reno Housing Authority does it. NDOT does it. City of Sparks does it. Washoe County does it. You're the only entity that doesn't do it. One of the directions that Councilman Deutsch had asked about, I guess to you, was look and see what these other people are doing. Their contracts, I know Councilman Guston made a comment, the contracts need to be very well defined, blah, blah, blah. Other people are doing this. There's other contracts out there. I'd be happy to share the contracts. I mean, they're all public, processes, but there's a lot of other entities out there putting out landscaping, I guess is what I'm referring to. I'm sorry, just to be clear. I suspect they found it to be successful because they keep renewing these contracts. They're typically one-year service contracts with options to renew, and they keep renewing them. So other government entities are finding it successful to do this. I think it's great that you guys are again looking at it, and there's other RFP legal type of documents out there that other entities are using. And again, I assume they're being successful because they keep renewing those types of contracts. And I read the council agenda item, Mr. Dortch, the snow removal. I read that to be snow removal like at your buildings and whatnot, not necessarily on your streets. Maybe I read the item wrong. I don't know what you guys are looking at doing, but that's how I read that, was like sidewalks and downtown and your parks and your municipal buildings and the police department and that type of thing. I wasn't even thinking about doing street snow removal, but I don't know what you guys are looking at doing. But I just want to let you know that other entities are doing it. I think they're being successful at it, and I would encourage you to look at their contractual documents if you guys do those types of things and see what they're doing that's successful. I think you could be also.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Appreciate your input. Mr. Azzi, you had something?
Well, I guess it's just to ask Dwight, because it's sort of up in the air, how we're going to go about this.
That's process is what we need to look at right now.
Because I think it's fair to the city manager who's, he's been here for a while, but not that long.
Hey, wait a minute, this is 2 meetings. How
How
much more time do you want to give him?
To let him look at those things like Pierre brought forward and bring forward a plan on how he would bring those back, because I agree we should be looking at some of these things.
Yeah, and obviously I think I'd want to see the RFP, or, at least have a look at that before it goes out. And I think, maybe during this process, as we try to figure out how to put these together, we invite some of the people that might actually be bidding on it to come in and help us, as far as how we would draft these to send them out.
And what would the time frame be? That's the other thing. We have 2 more meetings in July, and then
So we could do it by the end of July?
We won't be here. we won't be here.
Why don't we give him until our first or second meeting in October and give him plenty of time? Because we're going to be in and out for the next, we have 2 more meetings in June or July.
Yeah, I think he could come back with an update on the process.
Of what he's doing
in
September meeting or something, and then just
to let us know where it's going and how it's going. And the other question is do we want to have a couple council members working with him in a subcommittee type setting to try and get this process moving?
And yes.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'd just like to say I think it's something we need to evaluate before we go out to an RFP. I think we need to maybe identify some areas where there would be an opportunity to go out to an RFP. Obviously, we've got to do a cost comparison, but then I also think there are certain risks that you have to weigh as well, because once you privatize, there are certain risks that the city will be taking once you do that. And so I think we need to be well informed before we go down this road. But it's certainly something I think that we could bring back a report to the council on areas that we potentially could identify.
And as the gentleman pointed out earlier, working on I'm not sure I want to send my police cars out just to any mechanic, but those are types of things we can look at and go through. Parks Department, all those type of things we can look at. So if he got back to us with a report at the end give us a status report at our last meeting in September.
Well, I think he could probably get back to us before that.
Well, you're going to be gone. No, that's August, 1st of September then.
Let's get an update at the end of August.
End of August. Yeah, end of August, yeah. So just an update where we're looking at where you are, okay?
And then we can make some determinations at that point how we want to move forward.
Right. You have clear enough instruction? All right. Now, ladies and gentlemen, item C11, Ms. Fraza is not here. She's the one that requested this. Karen Jenkins of the Nevada Commission on Ethics.
Mr. Mayor, Tracy Chase, Ms. Jenkins is here, but if we would recommend you take a short break so we could get the slide presentation set up.
Okay.
And because it will be at least an hour to hour and a half and time frame.
Okay, we're going to be in recess for the next